Hi friends, and welcome. Thanks for joining me again this week. As you can probably hear, it's a little blustery here on our bend in the river, but this week's adventure, it is nothing short of amazing. In fact, it's going to require quite a bit of explanation. I know we're going to have to travel backward and forward in time. We're going to have to measure by hours and minutes. We're going to have to run up and down the nation's highways. And when we get done with all of that, well, it's going to be a little tough to swallow even then. I guess the best way to explain this is to start at the beginning. So, hey, I'm your host, Kyle Randall. This is my Wilderness Journal, and have I got a deer story for you. The end of this story actually begins on the second full day in Ohio. I was reaching over to pick up my bow. I had just finished some grunting, and I could see a buck working his way in toward our scent station. This obviously wasn't a shooter, a 2-year-old 6 or 8 point, but something that needed at least another year or two to be mature. Still, this time of year, you never know. A bigger, more mature buck could be following this one in, and besides, every time you're in front of a deer, it's great to practice that pressure control, that adrenaline management. You certainly do run the risk of spooking a deer. That's part of the point. When you learn how and when you can move, when you control yourself and the situation, you are one step closer to being able to handle the pressure when the big boy's standing there and you have to do it for real. Friends, no matter how you look at it, I truly believe good fortune goes to those who are prepared. And I was. But unfortunately, no bigger, more mature buck ever showed, at least not that night. That definitely wasn't a shooter, but it was good to see a buck up in the daylight, cruising, looking for does, checking out our scent station. And I have to admit, friends, as it was my first day in the hunter's seat on this trip, my mind was wandering back to previous trips and hoping that we might see a little older model come in and check us out. That's what you always hope for on a hunt like this. And we had had so much good fortune that I found myself dreaming ahead a little bit, if you know what I mean. Fact is, I got caught a little flat-footed by a couple of does that were already halfway down our hillside when I spotted them. I expected to be able to hear them moving in the crunchy oak leaves, but I didn't. They were already within 100 yards, and friends, this time of year especially, the last thing you want to do is spook a doe. We watched intently as they slowly, ever so slowly, worked their way down the hillside. I knew they could smell the rut scent that we had out there. It's a pretty overpowering buck urine. And does, especially those that have been pestered some, are a little leery to come into it. Still, they were coming. I kept waiting, hoping sooner or later Mr. Big was going to charge out of the brush and take claim of these girls. Unfortunately, at least so far, it was just the two of them. They did work their way all the way down to our mock scrape, tested the wind, and then turned and slowly worked off the side of the hill. And I have to admit, like I said earlier, I did find myself sitting there, daydreaming. It was, after all, the 10th of November again. We were back in the same spot, hunting with the same outfitter. And it was the morning after my first night in stand, just like it was last year, just like it was for Tom one short day ago. Tom and I both heard a grunt from behind us. He slowly turned and looked. We couldn't see anything. But when he turned back, the buck in front of us had turned and was staring dead at us, or at least dead underneath us. He was laser-locked right at us. There we were. I was facing him. Tom kept peeking behind us. There was something moving back there. We could hear it. I didn't dare turn and look, though. I was out in the open. Anything behind me would certainly see me turn, and on top of that, we had a buck staring right at us at 20 yards. Shh. I stood there frozen until Tom slowly turned and pointed and gave me that look, like, I'm going to kill you. I knew I had to move. There was a buck, another buck, right up behind us, and Tom wanted me to turn and get on that deer. Unfortunately, like I said, I was caught right in between the two of them. A nice buck in front of us, a huge buck behind us, and I could hear Tom whispering, "You on him? You on him?" Yes. Amazingly, I'd made it all the way around to the deer behind me. Now it was on Tom again. He needed to get drawn and shoot without spooking either one of these deer. Yeah, I was on that for long. Nice buck, dude. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Well, turning back and forth a little bit, that is a monster buck, dude. Congratulations. Beautiful 4-year-old. I don't know, what's he got? I guess 10 scoreable points or so? That, friends, was a monster buck, truly the deer of a lifetime. And the fact that Tom had been able to accomplish harvesting a buck like that in just one evening and one morning on stand, well, that made it even more amazing. The truth is, when you hunt wild whitetails like these in a place that gets more than a little bit of hunting pressure, well, getting it done that short on a buck that good, well, it doesn't happen every day. And that wasn't even the beginning of this story. In fact, one short year earlier, the roles were reversed. Tom was videoing, I was hunting. We were in the same camp with Ty McCombs, and we had been in the stand exactly one evening and one morning when... Imagine telling an outfitter you're just going to run out and harvest a deer they've been hunting for years. Show me.
Well, this is
we'll just run out and get that one, okay?
That's fine. That'll work for me. That'll work for you.
Yeah, sounds simple. We'll just run out there and fetch it.
That's the way it works, right?
And the very next morning, I was just putting my stuff down when... There's a buck coming. It took me a second to find him in the brush, and then my eyes about popped. This wasn't just a buck. This was the buck Ty had showed us the pictures of. Any little mistake now, and this would grenade. He had come pretty steady until about 40 yards, and then he stopped. He stood. He looked. This is the stuff that makes my hair gray. It's also the reason I love this kind of hunting. No, we don't have to worry about that one. Look, I said, look at that. Oh, a few stickers. Look at that buck. That monster 10-point started this whole thing, and it truly wasn't lost on Tom or Ty or myself how improbable, how unlikely it was to harvest 2 monster bucks in the same place with just basically a day on stand a year apart. That doesn't happen hardly ever. And I have to tell you what else wasn't lost on me anyway. With Tom's quick harvest, that meant there was going to be at least a couple of days for me to hunt on this trip. So you know what we did. We got right back out in the field. Tom had just finished whispering to me that I only had a couple of hours left in my hunt. You know, if I wanted to keep the tradition alive. No pressure, though. And then I heard a grunt. Then I heard it again. We looked and we looked. And then finally, a buck. What I believed to be the same small 8-point we'd seen the night before was working his way across the hillside going in the other direction. And as he crossed, we noticed that he was actually rousting a doe fawn. I don't know if she'd just worked her way in or had been bedded there all morning, but either way, he popped her out of her bed, scent checked her, and then he continued on across the hillside. I watched the buck work his way off the hillside and then noticed the doe fawn was actually looping right up underneath me. She walked right down the old dozer trail passing by us. We were seeing deer, just not the kind of deer I was hoping for, at least not yet. A few minutes later, we did have a mature doe with a couple of fawns work her way up onto the bench just at the edge of our opening. They milled around off to the side for a while. It seemed like our scent was making them pretty nervous. I told you before, that buck scent has a kind of suppressing effect on does. It tends to push them away. Fortunately, she didn't spook, she didn't stomp. She just got a little bit uneasy, a little bit hocky, and then moved off up the hillside to bed. Unfortunately, there wasn't any big old buck following this doe either. That morning's activity had actually been a little slow. It was one of those days I figured the bucks were all locked down with the does and they weren't traveling far. So after sitting for another half hour or so, letting the sun get full up, I decided to try some grunting and some rattling. Now I should tell you, this doesn't work nearly as well in the middle of the rut as it does in the pre or the post rut. Most of the bucks are locked down, like I said, but I had hopes that I might catch a mature deer traveling between girlfriends, looking for a new date. Either way, I knew that love is the most powerful motivator, but trust me, friends, jealousy can be a close second. I got to my feet and started doing some grunting and some rattling. It's like I said, this doesn't work near as well as it does in the pre-rut. But at this point, it couldn't hurt to try. And not long after I got set down, I heard a grunt. I turned and looked. There was a dandy buck coming up the hillside. I immediately motioned to Tom. I felt this was a shooter. He was standing over there working the first stop in our scrape line coming into our scent station. This wasn't the biggest buck in Ohio, not by a long shot, but it was a mature, high, heavy 8-point, and I'd already made up my mind. If he got in there and gave me a chance, he made his way up to our second scrape and then stood there working it a little bit. This plan was coming together. He was coming right up the scrape line, the one that we had made, and working his way in. Now all we needed was for him to come a little bit closer. This was definitely a shooter. A nice, heavy, mature 8-point buck. All I needed now was for him to get into a spot where I could get a shot. You could tell the scent was really starting to work on him now. He was standing there and you could see the saliva dripping off his chin. He was full on hypnotized. The longer he stood there, the worse it got, and then he was just flat out drooling. He was standing well within range and I'd made it to my feet. Unfortunately, my shot was obstructed. And then he turned around like he was leaving. I put the seat up on my stand and started to turn with him. I grunted. Bah. And he stopped with a tree right over his chest. I figured that's it. He's gone. And then he took a few steps back down the hill, stopped again. And then he turned and started working his way back. If he kept coming, I just might get another chance. As he worked his way back up the hill, I came to full draw. But I was totally obstructed. There was just enough brush in the way I didn't have a shot. He'd made it all the way up. He was standing there drooling and dripping right in front of our scent station. You can see the solar charger on the tree for the game camera. He was right there. And then he moved forward a little bit, and then he turned and left again. I was wearing my shoulder out drawing this bow. And every time I thought he was going to finally leave, he'd stop, turn back. That scent had him, and it was pulling him. All I could do now was hope that sooner or later it would pull him close enough so I could finally get a shot. The buck worked his way all the way back up to our scent station, and this time he actually took an extra step. He was in the open. I drew the bow, and he backed up. He stopped for a moment facing downhill, but he was still obstructed. I had to let it down, and when I did, he started walking away again, only to stop and turn back again. I'd already lost count of how many opportunities I'd got at this buck, but friends, I've been at this a long time, and I knew sooner or later he was going to catch me. I needed to get this done, or it wasn't going to get done at all. And then, finally, he came that one step farther. He's down right there. I can see him kicking. He's right there. Right there. That deer didn't go 30. Right there, brother. We got it. Man. I hate that. I love it, but I hate it. You know what I mean? That is so exciting. That buck stopped 5 times. You think he'd give me a spot where there wasn't a stick? And he'd start to leave, and then he'd come back. That's the rut. I could see the spit dripping off his chin. Wow. And he didn't go, thank you, Lord. I tell you what, you need a stress test. You come pounding up this hill in the dark wearing too many clothes and then wait out a buck like that. Come from straight downwind. Holy smokes. Ty McCombs, you the man. I tell you, this Ohio thing, this could be a real habit.
Yep.
And like we said yesterday, it's a good habit. I don't want to break this one.
No, you got that.
Nice job. I tell you what, we've been here, this 3rd day?
Yep. 2nd morning.
And we got 2 great bucks.
Yep.
The rut in this part of Ohio is incredible. And
Beautiful deer.
well, it's not always like this. I don't want people to think, don't believe that you're just going to run down here for a day and shoot a deer just because Tom does. You want to go see a deer?
Let's go see him.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's go see him.
Why not?
Go take a look.
Right up here, I can see the solar charger for the game camera. There's some hair. It had to be right here. There's 0. Definitely a pass through. This should be a fairly easy recovery. I always say that, there's always the hunt after the hunt, but we saw this deer hit the ground. He's right down there, but we're going to follow the sign just in case. So I did lose sight of him. Shouldn't be too hard to pick up even for an old colorblind guy. Oh, yeah, right. Obviously, he went right through here. Oh yeah, I already got it on me. That didn't take long. Down here. Right here. This is a good one. Even I can follow this one, buddy. This T isn't here. She usually recovers my deer because I'm, as everybody knows, kind of colorblind. But this one's pretty easy to see. Went right through here. All through here. Oh, and he went down right there, right where we saw. Come on, buddy. He is right there, my brother. And I don't think he's, like I always say, I don't think he's just taking a nap. Hello, Mr. Buck. Look at there. I know him. He's all done. Yeah, buddy. That is a dandy 8-point buck right there. Nice 3-year-old, not a monster buck like the one you shot. but certainly a good adult mature buck. Nice long tines. I'm pleased as punch with it. What do you think, Mr. Tom?
Great deer.
Awesome, awesome, awesome hunt. Thank you again, Ty. Just an awesome, awesome time as always. Look at that. Nice long tines. Nice mass. It's a great trip down here. Eastern Ohio, southeastern Ohio, Licking County. It is definitely, I don't know if we're going to keep getting away with doing these 1 and 2 day hunts, but I sure hope so, buddy. Thank you, Lord. This is going to eat right over to Randall's. Come on over, we're having something for supper. Look at that, man. That's awesome, buck. Coming home, T, coming home. It happened again. A most improbable triple play, a Tinkers to Evers to Chance, 3 tremendous, totally wild whitetails, all with archery gear, all in the same camp, all with less than 24 hours spent on stand. I don't know how to explain it. I can't even tell you how it happened exactly, and I can say that Ty and Tom, all of us are still scratching our heads wondering why we were so fortunate. The truth, I know luck had a lot to do with it, but I also know preparation and scent control, practice under pressure, so when that big boy does come in, you can close the deal. All of that has a lot to do with it. Being in the right place at the right time, it's truly important. Who you go with, where you go, all of those things are part of this kind of success, and to have that much success that quickly, well, it just doesn't happen all that often. I just believe that it's part of the balance. It's the other side of the scales for all the days I've sat looking at little or nothing in a tree stand. It all works out in the end, and trust me, friends, when it works out like that, with deer like that, well, it's pretty tough not to live with a smile on your face you can't beat off with a ball-peen hammer. That's the way I'm living right now. Hey, I hope we see you out there. I hope you get a chance to tag a big old buck like that. And if you do and we see you, well, you know we're going to stop and share a cup and a fire, help you drag your trophy out, and then we're going to celebrate the grand opportunity that is hunting whitetail deer. And if I don't see you out there, friends, well, then I'll wait for you right back here so we can share another adventure from my wilderness journal.